Hey everyone, welcome to our webinar on mastering UI regression testing with BrowserStack AI. So, few housekeeping items before we move ahead. So, this webinar is going to run for 60 minutes. Session is being recorded, and all participants are muted over here. But you can direct your questions to the Q&A section of the Zoom chat, where we have a panel waiting and ready to answer all your questions. We'll also have a Q&A session at the end. So you can you can hold your questions till the end, but also feel free to put them in the chat as we move along. So let me lay out the agenda of how we're going to spend the next hour of this call. Uh, First, I'm going to introduce myself and the speaker, our external speaker. We're going to talk a little bit about what is visual testing and why is it important. And we're going to be talking about how AI can help in visual testing. And of course, how MasterCard is leveraging our visual testing tools, which is Percy. And at the end, we're going to talk about what are some of the success metrics at MasterCard, and as well as maybe a little bit about your workflow. And of course, a Q&A section at the end. So a little bit about myself. My name is Keegan D'Souza. I'm a senior product manager here at BrowserStack. I head AI initiatives in our visual testing products. That's Percy, App Percy, and Visual Scanner. I have 10 years of experience. 5 years of that is into engineering and full stack web development, and also 5 years into product management. I have with me Harit from MasterCard. Harit, can you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Myself, Harit Naki, currently working as lead software engineer at MasterCard. I have over a decade of experience in test automation, API reliability, currently building scalable solutions for quality engineering. Lately, I am uh, leading the visual testing aspects initiative using tools like Percy to improve UI validation. Thank you.
Thanks for the intro, Harit. So, so to start off, we are going to play a little game. We're going to have a small poll over here. That's called Spot the Difference. So what you can see here are two screens. One is before visual change has gone out, and one is after PR or a visual change has gone out, right? And what we want you to do is try to look at these two images and let us know how many changes, how many visual changes you think there are in this image between these two images. All right, I can't see how many people have voted. So let's I can't actually see the poll, so maybe we can move ahead. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is kind of a diff view to make it a little simpler to see how the number of differences between the two images, and I can see the answers that are pouring in over here. We see that I see that most people have actually selected 20 changes, 12 changes, 8 changes, and 4 changes. A couple of folks have selected none of the above. So none of the above would be right. There are actually 36 changes in these between these two images. Very hard to spot, I understand. So let's start off with a brief explanation of what is visual testing. So let's to put it in a nutshell, visual testing enables you to verify that your UI looks the way it's supposed to across all devices that your users interact with your app or your website. It's very simple. You're trying to make sure that everything looks as it's supposed to and all on all devices and screens that your users interact with it. Right? Uh, this co- this could be visual changes could be multiple types. You could have color changes, you could have font changes, you could have layout changes as well. You could have alignments between changing alignments between different aspects of the page, right? So visual testing actually looks for uh, re- mistakes in your UI implementation. So say maybe there's an unintended color change. Maybe you've changed a CSS class on one page, but that's actually affected a lot of other pages out there, right? Maybe that's had a cascading impact on maybe 100 screens out there, right? So that's what visual testing focuses on. It tries to minimize the amount of human error that you would have, say, in trying to manually eyeball images and trying to spot the visual difference, like we did in the previous poll. So why is visual testing important? I think you saw it very clearly in the previous slide when we try to manually eyeball the differences between the two images, right? UI manually looking at each pixel that has changed on a screen is very difficult. So visual testing or UI testing is focused on the visual aspect of testing, something that functional testing is not focused on. Your functional testing will let you know that, say, a button works really well and it does what it's supposed to, but it won't tell you that your button is looks the way it's supposed to. It won't tell you that, say, the button colors right. It won't tell you that it's rounded to the right extent. Yes, you can approximate that to some extent with functional testing. Maybe you could check for a couple of classes, but the actual visual aspect of it, of checking how the button looks like, is not something a functional test can do. So now I've talked a little bit about what is visual testing, but I'm also going to talk a little bit about how AI can impact visual testing. So visual testing, or let's call it traditional visual testing, works by actually comparing each individual pixel between two screens. So on that little image that I showed you earlier, where there were two images side by side over there, and you saw that little red color image, right? That's a pixel to pixel difference of what has happened over there happen between those two images. So you could think of it as Git for images. That's one way of thinking of visual testing. But it's a pixel to pixel comparison, just like a line by line comparison in Git to show you what has changed. So we at BrowserStack have always tried to go beyond this traditional pixel to pixel comparison by leveraging AI to redefine how teams approach visual testing. And our focus of leveraging AI has always been to improve productivity. So how do we get visual tests to run faster? How do we make sure that humans are not spending too much time looking at changes that are not important to them? That's how we are leveraging AI. So you can see a couple of these examples on the screen. Like the first one I talked about, how we are trying to make sure that you only see the visual differences that are important to you, that are important to a human to review, and maybe not one little pixel added to or padding added to your button. So that's how we are leveraging AI. So maybe trying to make sure that you're only spending time reviewing the changes that are actually relevant. We also try to group similar changes together to make it much easier to understand what's changed on multiple pages. Say you've got a footer bar or a header that has changed on several pages all across the website. We try to make that a little easier by grouping those changes together so that the review process of the changes goes a little faster, easier, right? Yeah. All right. So now I'm going to actually give you a quick preview of how we are leveraging how we are leveraging AI for visual testing at Percy. At so Yep. I'm actually going to give you a quick demo of actually not a small, of a very exciting feature that we launched just 2 months ago. It's called a visual review agent. It's easier to show than to actually talk about, but what it does is it improves your productivity by, say, 3x. Let me just share my screen. Right. So I hope sorry, just give me a second. Yeah, I hope everyone can see my screen. So what you see here is actually what a visual test looks like in Percy. You can see two side-by-side images over here, and you can see that you can see what you see on the left-hand side is the original version of that image or the baseline of that image, and what you see on the right-hand side is the new version of that image, right? So now again, we did that whole manual eyeballing exercise, and we saw that it's a little tough to manually see what has changed on a page. So let me switch on this overlay mode. So this will give you that red view of what has changed. And you can see that even though it's a little bit easier to spot the changes, it's a lot. So you're looking at this and you see a lot of red pixels, a very messy image, right? So let me switch this back off so we can understand what has actually changed on this page. So if you look over here, this is a streaming website, in case you didn't notice that. What you see over here is the other top trending sections, you could say, on a website. So if you think of Netflix or somewhere Amazon Prime or someone else out there, they would have these top trending sections on the website, and this is something that would change from day to day. So or even week to week, right? It's not something that's say triggered by a PR or by a code change. It's something that's changed because of the state of the system, because some algorithms recommending a different set of shows every day, right? So the question that comes in here is that even though this is a visual change on my website, should a human spend time reviewing this? The answer is probably no, right? Because this is not a visual bug. At the same time, it's not caused by a code change. So maybe reviewing shows like this is not something I need to do. And if I could draw your attention to the section over here which says language preferences, you will notice that this section is actually what has changed for my image. So I'll turn on my red view to make that a little simpler. So this section over here, the red pixels on the right hand side, is actually what has changed. So you can see that my language selection has moved away. So what I've shown you till now is what a regular Percy visual review looks like. I've not yet showed you the power of AI. So if you see this little AI button out here, this is going to turn on our review agent, and I'm going to turn on the red view so you actually see the impact over here. I'm going to switch this on. So you would have seen a bunch of things change, right? You would have noticed at first that a bunch of red pixels have gone away. So what our visual review agent has actually done over here is gone into this image. It's actually understood that hey, this is a section on a website which is about the top shows. It's caused by some dynamic data out there or the state of the system. It's not something you should spend time reviewing. So it's actually gone and applied that intelligence and removed all that away from me. Because of that, my review becomes much easier. Now you can see it's not so overwhelming to look at this image. I only understand that, hey, okay, the only thing that's changed on this page is this top section over here. And just to so that's one capability of review agent. It filters out all changes that it feels that a human does not need to spend time reviewing. And because of that, if you see on the left hand side over here, I've actually got some time. It actually tells me how much time it saved me. So it's actually saved me 15 minutes across this entire build by cutting out changes that I would normally spend time reviewing. Right. So that's the main power of review agent. It goes in and applies that intelligence and speeds up your review process. On the other hand, and this is also a very cool feature, review agent has also makes it very easy for me to understand what is changed. So you might still look at this image and you might say, hey, I'm just seeing, let me turn this off. I just see a little box over here, but when I see this red view, I can see something over here, but it's a little hard for me to understand what has changed. So if I click on this here, you can see review agent actually has made it very easy for me to understand what's changed by giving me a description of that change in plain English. So it's actually told me that, hey, the language preferences drop down, which was there, the top of the page, it's now been removed entirely from the page. And which is exactly what has happened. If I turn off this little red pixel view, you notice that has actually gone away from the page. Right. So this is the second most powerful aspect of review agent. It's actually gone in and it's told me what it's gone in, understood what's going on this page, and explained that back to me in simple English. So I don't need to think for like 10 minutes about what's this cluster of red pixels that I'm looking at. Right. And to show you another very cool feature of review agent. So if I switch, let me go back and switch this on and off. So you see a bunch of red pixels have turned to yellow. What this means is that review agent has cut these out, but it's also showing me what I've cut out. So I have a little bit more confidence of what it's filtered out for me. And if I click on this over here, it's actually gone in and described to me why it has felt this change is not relevant to be reviewed. So it's actually, if you read this, I'll just sum it up. It's actually given you the same explanation that I gave you. That hey, this is typical for a dynamic content section where which typically updates every couple of days or every couple of weeks, and it does not represent a UI regression or a bug. So it's given me that confidence about why it's removed that change. You see, it's also cut out a bunch of like carousel indicator changes over here. Now, a carousel indicator could change from time to time, right? It's not a visual regression or a bug over there. So it's actually identified that and made my job much more easier. So yes, this is the power of review agent. It's available across all plans in BrowserStack right now. It's in the beta version right now. It's also available on free plans as well. So do go in and try it out. Right. So let me switch back to my presentation. All right. So let me move on to the next screen. So little bit about, just to go back and reiterate a little bit of what we are talking about, what we are exploring with the newer Gen AI at BrowserStack with Percy. So we are leveraging AI technologies to enhance Percy's visual engine. So we've also got a feature, for example, called IntelliIgno, which actually goes in and understands changes to images and also filter out minor changes to images, very similar to what Review Agent just did. uh, Again, one of our biggest focuses is all, and our biggest focus with AI is always productivity. We are always trying to save time, making sure the humans spend as little time as possible. Only the necessary amount of time that they need to spend on a visual review. And we are also, like you saw, we are also distinguishing between dynamic data and actual browser flakiness. That's what infra-related issues are versus actual code changes, right? But a few other ideas by exploring is how can we even improve this either further, right? How can we look at your past test runs and your actions of a review of approving or disapproving your bills and your visual tests, and how can we make those decisions easier for you going forward? How can we handle maybe dynamic elements on a web page, like say loaders and videos and SVGs automatically without you having to go in and freeze a loading animation, for example, because a loading animation is something that would always change on a page, right? It's not a visual bug, but if you catch a loader at different status, there's always going to be a change. So how can we go in and automatically identify that? So review agent is already working towards that, and it's going to get there in a couple of weeks, in fact, right? So I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to hand it over to Harit over here to take over for me. And Harit's going to talk a little bit about how Percy has been a game changer for Mastercard. So Harit, over to you.
Thanks, Keegan. Yeah, and it was a very nice demo. We could clearly see the difference. Yeah, I will quickly start it. I will just quickly start with a bold statement, right? Visual testing is a necessity at Mastercard. It's not just to have a tool, but it's a necessity, right? Now, this is something that we are talking today, but I'm pretty much sure with 6 months into future, we would be talking like visual testing is necessity to each and every organization coming out there and trying to have their content visually validated. Coming back to how MasterCard is leveraging and how it's a game changer, right? We operate at a scale that's hard to compromise. Like we have almost 150 digital products and almost 1000 documentation page, and those gets updated daily across global teams, right? And manual validating is just not a feasible solution, right? It's slow, it's prone to error, and we need a smarter automation solution. Not just the code but the user experience as well matters, and that's where the Percy tool comes handy, right? And that's how the our code comes into handy, right? How the MasterCard commitment comes over here, right? It's AI powered visual testing helps us move faster with more confidence and less risk. Just talking from a QA perspective, how important is the confidence factor when we sign off any particular release or any particular image in just for an example in this particular case, right? And that's where Percy has been a game changer for us. Yeah, on to the next slide.
Yeah. So Harit, a little bit
Mhm,
before I move on, right?
mhm.
So you mentioned that manually eyeballing is not something Mastercard can do. Obviously, you've got thousands of pages. I can only imagine what that's
Yes,
going to look like and what the team size would look like. You'll need a country to do that.
right.
Right. So while getting started with Percy, were there any standout features? I know on the next slide we're going to talk about what are the best features of Percy for you, but any small maybe feature that really stood out for you while trying out Percy for the first time?
Yeah, for the first time when we were trying it out, right? The attractive factor was whenever we took a particular screenshot, it wasn't taking the screenshot just of the view that was visible, right? It was actually taking the screenshot of a complete page. So that was one thing, because from QA perspective, just to write this code, scroll the complete page, take the screenshot, join all of the screenshots together and have one single image wasn't a feasible solution. But with Percy, it was just one line of code. We just called the method and it was able to take the screenshot of the complete page. This was the eyeball uh, feature for me that just attracted.
Yeah, got it. And Harit, you've actually touched upon maybe a very small, minor aspect of Percy, something that you wouldn't even notice, something we don't call out maybe on a pricing page or something like that, but something a very valid challenge, right? So a lot of
Yes.
folks we see out there who are trying to implement their own version of a screenshot catcher script, right? They don't notice things like, hey, how do I scroll down and catch the entire capture the entire page? Maybe I just captured a viewport, but then how do I capture the entire page? And then even if they're able to do that, what if I've got multiple scrollable elements in a page? I've got multiple nested divs and each of them have their own scroll bars. How do I handle cases like that, right? So Percy handles that all under the hood. You don't need to worry about it. You don't need to write a complex script yourself, right? And you can just focus on actually performing a visual review. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Like that was the factor that the POC went through, and then we started using it. So that was a game-changing feature, at least for us, which is a technical feature, but then one who implements it, it's a game changer for them.
nice. So let's go on to the next slide. Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit about how MasterCard is leveraging Percy.
Yes, it is integrated directly into our development and release pipeline. Every pull request automation triggers the Percy suite, and it captures the screenshot, compares them, creates a baseline, and have a pixel to pixel difference. It's like having a hyper focused Q engineer who is always by our side, right? Even someone like better developers and QA can't act or won't be able to differentiate these changes as you shown in your first poll itself, right? Even though we had how many hundred of us, 200 eyes looking at one particular image, but I guess none of us would have been able to find the exact differences that that particular example had. So yeah, on to the next slide, we will just see how it's a game changer with some metrics on it.
Yeah, and I understand that. I think my eyes hurt from looking at my laptop for only a couple of hours. So I can just imagine what looking at a bunch of manually eyeballing images like the first one would look like.
Yeah, I know this slide has a lot of information, but let me give you the story behind it instead of going through row by row, right? When we began exploring this particular visual testing features, we went through different tools, right? We tried some tools where there were limitations, taking screenshots and joining, right? And that's when we started exploring Percy, right? And then we started discovering the patterns like UI regression that slipped through functional testing. And just to stop all of those, we decided no, Percy is the tool that we should be leveraging and start using those, right? And what we see in the summary right now is the result of all the uh, Percy hard work that it's doing for us behind the scene, right? For us, it's just a one-time effort to build up the framework, but all of the hard work behind the scene is being done by Percy, and now AI Intelli is coming to help us further to help approving the bills if it doesn't find anything that's alarming. So yeah, but the real insight is our QA stack has a gap, and that gap was visually validated with Percy. So instead of testing just the logic of our apps, how they are performing, how the app is behaving, but we started looking into look and feel, layout factor, and content integrity as well. So that's what has changed for us with visual testing. There are factors as well, right, where we are talking about defect detection with number of defects we have been detected with the time saved. But yeah, we will talk those factors when we look at the success matrix of MasterCard in the next slide.
Uh, Harit, you did also mention about the visual integrity, right? I think something important to know there is for a brand like MasterCard, where branding is everything, right? Branding is super important. Visual testing obviously would also be very important there. So I'm sure that branding was a strong push towards visual testing. Like
Yes, yes,
I can
absolutely.
imagine what would happen if one of your logos gets a little cropped or goes a little off. So yeah.
Yes, I mean, there are two factors to it right now. Let's take an example. Even though image is changed a bit, right? But do you have any baseline to compare? No, we don't have any baseline because that particular image has already changed, right? Even if you start looking at that particular image, it would look correct to you. But with Percy, right, you have a baseline which is captured. You know, like
Mm.
this is how the website should look, right? And whenever there is any change that comes in, this baseline helps us. The baseline itself maintains thousands of screenshots for us, so we don't have to do the dual work that deploy the old build, deploy the new build, and see the difference.
Yeah, I think that's another factor that a lot of teams miss out while trying to manually do visual testing, right? That you always feel like you miss that little point of how do I maintain my baseline? So, okay, now suddenly I need to actually maintain a single snapshot for every single screen every time it changes. So for every build and PR I'm pushing out, and that's potentially touching 1,000 pages, I have to maintain and store 1,000 images so that
Exactly.
and store them in an easy way so that next time a PR goes out, I can actually go back and review that, find that same snapshot for that test case very easily. So that's another maintenance overhead that you would have
Yes,
to build out. Yeah, great.
exactly.
Yeah, and uh, I think something I didn't mention earlier, I and that's you called out here in this slide is that sorry is the cross browser support, right? So I think I touched upon it a little bit at the start, but when you're doing a visual test in that first image that I showed you, it's not just one set image that you're reviewing. It's not one snapshot that you're reviewing for each screen. It's actually a snapshot for every browser that you're targeting, for every app or device that you're targeting. It's going to look different on every app, every device, and at every different resolution. So if I'm just talking, let's keep it simple and just talk a website, right? Say you've got four major browsers out there on desktop and say two on mobile, right? So what that means is that you have to test that across, do that same eyeballing across four or five or six different browsers, and at multiple resolutions, then that could go up to 16 or 32, right? As well. So you actually it just scales a lot. And what we've usually seen with teams is that because of the amount of effort that they have to put into all of this, right? They usually what their visual tests are not they don't cover everything. The coverage isn't great. They actually spend a lot. They actually do a little smoke testing. Say you would test out what's relevant to this PR, and then maybe you'll test out the critical flows, or maybe one or two browsers, maybe Chrome and Edge you'll test out on, and then you'll say, hey, the rest should work, right? But that's not always the case. So yeah, that's also important. That a browser stack we give you that ability to test your run your visual test across all the major browsers out there on desktop and mobile and at different resolutions as well. And we do have a app Percy out there which lets you test on different device and application. I'll move on to the next slide. Harit, I know you want to talk about Mastercard's workflow and give a couple of examples.
Yes, we can move to the next slide. I will just walk through the uh, success metrics right now. Let's talk about the results because implementing a new tool is one thing, right? But proving its value is what really matters, right? So how did visual testing help us, right? There were three areas basically. It's defect detection, efficiency gain, and release confidence, right? Just a spoiler alert, right? Percy delivered in all of those three factors for us when and that's the reason that's the reason we went ahead with this particular tool and started implementing throughout our application. Just coming to the success matrix, right? First, defect detection in one iteration alone, we were able to caught six regression defects with multiple test case failures. We also expanded visual coverage across critical user flows with zero manual effort, right? I will just emphasize more on the efforts, right, where we are putting in now. Let's say we encounter that one particular flow is breaking, right? Uh, it's as easy as 30-second job for us to add a coverage for that particular use case, and we are good enough to have the coverage across all six or all four different browsers with different resolution. So imagine within 30 seconds just passing the URL to the framework and it's able to capture the screenshot with different browsers, different resolution. That's how the powerful tool has been for us. So yeah, that was one of the factor, Keegan, where we were able to uh, use this tool at a larger scale because it was more easier for us to implement with just passing the URL. And
Harit, sorry to
mhm,
interrupt you. Before you move ahead, you mentioned 30 seconds for to put that test case on Percy. How long would
yes.
that have taken you to like manually maybe put a workflow or write a script or a manual screenshotting script yourself for one test case?
Yeah, I mean, even if we use other tools, right, and build up the framework, or let's take Selenium over here as an example, even though it doesn't qualifies as a visual testing tool, but it does covers our flow with respect to we can at least verify if that particular web element is present. That would still take around maybe 2 hours of effort to have the complete test case up and running.
Oh, and that would only cover whether it's present, not whether it
Uh,
looks how it's supposed.
exactly, exactly,
Okay.
right.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, with the efficiency gain, right? With every iteration, we are saving almost 7.5 hours. This number may look bigger, but let me give you one particular example, right? We started with 150 products, and we are seeing that at Mastercard we have thousands of documentation pages, right? We are not even covering 5% of those at present, but with what we have achieved, or we have just gone with most important ones, and just to compare those pages itself, I've just given a ballpark number that each page comparison would take around let's say 10 minutes for manual eyes, and we have almost 200 right now where we are covering, and that's where the number of 7.5 hours comes in for us every iteration that we are saving.
Wow.
And just to add an example, right? I mean, let's say there is one particular bootstrap update that happens behind the scene, right? It's a small library update from dev team, but then it's lot of UI changes that happens behind the scene, and to have all of those covered with manual efforts is absolutely impossible. And that's where this tool comes in, and we were able to run all of our automation with 15 to 20 minutes of time cycle, and we were able to identify which all the changes have taken place and are those expected ones. So just one thing, right? Visual testing is it's not only about catching defects, it's also making sure the changes that we are pushing in are those intended ones or not. Sometimes, or most of the cases, those can be a valid changes as well, but we are not even aware that those changes have been pushed behind the scene, and that's where this tool is a gatekeeper for us to make sure that everything that goes through production is being validated before we sign off.
Wow. And Harit, in fact, your bootstrap example is a very common example that we hear. So
Exactly.
a lot of the customers that a lot of folks that come to us, right, and before they're customers of Percy, and when the time when they realize that they need something like visual, like Percy or visual testing product and tool, is usually after a big library or CSS framework update like this, like Bootstrap update. I've heard it 1,000 times. Like we've
Yes.
updated a Bootstrap library. It caused a bunch of unintended changes, broke a ton of pages. And that's when we realized we need Percy. It's unfortunate that people realize after the fact, but it does happen very often. And
Yes.
it's good that you preempted it by having Percy in place.
Yes.
Yep. So let me go to the next slide.
Yeah, now early QA testing, right? This is one of the biggest integration that we have done, right? Because Percy runs at the beginning of QA cycle, even before the functional automation, right? And it gives us a feedback like where the fix has occurred. Are those intended changes? Are we release confidence, right? This is a very important factor when we say release confidence. Percy actually gives us a clear go no go signal over here. It's easy to use, easy to understand, and most importantly, it's helping us to build trust whenever we are signing off any particular release.
Harit, I don't think I asked you this earlier. Which
Mhm.
tool do you integrate with? Because Percy has a
Uh,
ton of integrations. So,
yeah, we are using Jenkins over here.
okay, you've integrated with Jenkins. All right,
Yeah,
fine. Yes.
yeah. Right
So,
now, like we were just talking about, how it's impacted, but maybe in the future examples, right, where those are the valid use cases where
hmm,
people can relate over it and try to understand how important those factors are when I mentioned in the previous slides.
got it. I'll go to that. Harit, one more question before we
Yeah.
move on, I'm sure a lot of folks in the audience will have this question, right? How does this scale? How does this scale with a large team? How does your workflow look like at a very high level? Obviously, I don't want you to go into too much detail, but you've got multiple teams using Percy. Does that work well? Maybe some other useful features that help you manage this your workflow across teams.
Yes, so right now, so the important hurdle we had was with respect to getting the build approved because it's not us who owns those particular PLP pages or the documentation pages. It's the product owners who owns for that particular product. And so we at present we are collaborating with them or trying to collaborate with them and making sure the intended changes goes in. But I guess with AI tool agent that's coming in, we won't be in a need that we will have to always go to the product owner to have a particular build sign off.
Hmm.
So at present, like with what you said, it would be able to identify the changes which are really an important one which has changed, and we can just ignore the orange factor and just concentrate on the red factor in the example that you had shown. Yeah, this is an interesting example. Now, if you look at these two images, right, there was a subtle change with respect to the font for the title, right? A subtle font change. It doesn't breaks the functionality, but it breaks the brand consistency. So Percy just flagged it instantly, and then we had to further highlight it to the product team. So yeah, this is a clear example, right? And as we are on the screen, we can see that this particular screenshot is being highlighted for Edge with a particular resolution 1280, right? But we can just navigate through different browsers on the same screen and see the difference between each of the browser. And further, we also have a mobile view for this, right? When we switch to 375 pixels, it gives us a mobile view itself. And that itself is useful because people tend to ignore how a particular web page would look on the mobile view. And this is absolutely handy. And let me tell you, like it's just a 1 minute configuration to have which browser you want to have your run. You want your Percy build to run, and within 1 minute of configuration, you will have everything on the build as per your configuration. At the top as well, you can also see the difference, right? It says that in this particular page, there is a difference of around 2%, and that's clearly highlighted over here. So that is also an important factor for us whenever we try to approve any particular build or review any particular build. That is an important factor for us to understand how much of a difference we are having from this image to the baseline. So yeah, that's one example. Maybe we'll move to the next one, Keegan. Yeah, now this one is a subtle change. I'm pretty sure even if you zoom in 100% with this particular image on the web page, no one would have been able to caught this particular change that has happened, right? So it's a subtle, I would say, zero point 0.5 padding change, which has happened behind the scenes. But yeah, with Percy, we were able to catch this particular change, and then it wasn't an intended change that went in. But yeah, we were, as we said, like we are running all of this during QA week, so we have all of this fixed before everything goes to the production. But yeah, this is one clear example where we can see that uh, even though with manual eye, even if you zoom out or zoom in, 100% you won't be able to catch the difference. And even if you catch the difference, you will have to have a baseline. And you can see that this baseline is 2 months ago. And I don't think so you would have something maintained what a particular web page looked like 2 months ago.
And this is also a good example of something that's impossible to catch with a functional test.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Now this is another example, right, where we can see the title has changed and there is a slight line added at the API basics, right? So this was one change which we got well before the QA cycle, and it was highlighted, and then it was fixed immediately. But yeah, I mean, this is still a change which is visually uh, detectable, But yeah, but we still have visual testing working for us 24/7, and we don't have to spend our efforts in identifying where it has changed.
And I'll be honest here on this one, even though there's an entire line over here,
Mhm.
if I was looking at this without this red pixel view and without Percy,
Okay.
I would have said,
Okay.
okay, it's fine, let's go ahead.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so over here, right, you could see that there are two pre-footers which are present, but with just a slight change with respect to indentation, and we can see that it's been clearly highlighted with Percy and exactly which area it has changed. So yeah, we were working on this particular feature, and Percy helped us to identify like how it looked previously and how it's looking right now, right? And this is a very good example, right? At the left-hand side, we had the uh, video link, but at the right-hand side, that particular video link was missing, and it was highlighted by Percy. So yeah, we had it fixed quickly. Right now, all these bugs would have likely gone unnoticed or worse, made it to production without visual testing in place. Yeah, this quote sum it up, right? The visual testing helps Mastercard scale without compromising, right? Or design or branding or experience.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Harit. That was well put. Let me see if what questions we have over here in the chat, and let me go ahead and try to answer them. Okay, can we have a bit of a discussion about the same for mobile app? Okay, yes. So I think something that was not covered well over here is that we also have a version of Percy called App Percy as well. It works exactly the same as you saw it over here as we showed for Web Percy. App Percy allows you to test across 20K plus devices out there. That's across different OSs, versions of OSs as well. So you can select and devices as well. So you can select a specific device and the operating system and the version and everything, and you can test across that the same way you would test for different browsers and resolutions. So we do have all the capabilities that you saw. All our capability AI capabilities are also available for mobile as well. Yes, on our App per C product. Next question: can you find the layout issue in phone device? Can AI find the layout issue in phone device, browser stack device? I do not have a good example of that handy right now, but this in fact is a change that we'll be rolling out. So you saw review agent, right? That I showed you review agent in action where it's able to detect only specific cases. So we are also testing something called layout testing with AI. Now, what layout testing will do is it will only focus on the layout changes inside an application for folks who are unaware of that. Layout changes talks about the relevant changes, the relative position of elements to each other. So, say if you've got an e-commerce website, you've got a bunch of sections, you've got cards over here, cards over there, but you don't care about say cosmetic changes, you don't care about font color changes, font styling changes, but you only care where the elements are placed. You care that your side nav is on your left hand side, your top bar is at the top, cards appear at a relative distance from each other, your cart icon is at a certain position. That's what layout testing would do. So we don't have that right immediately right now with the AI feature, but we'll be rolling that update out very soon. Say in the next couple of weeks. In fact, we are not in August yet, but towards the end of August or early September is when you would have that capability. Is the AI comparing doc and content of the actual copy from the design? So this question is from Todd. Todd, I'll try to answer this with a couple of assumptions over here. Document and content with actual copy from the design. So by design, if you mean like a Figma design, whether we can compare say an actual implementation with a Figma design, we do have that capability as well. So we have both. We actually compare it against a baseline, say from a previous commit that you have a previous pull request, like Harit was talking about, which is what Mastercard does. We also have a Figma integration, which lets you compare how your implementation looks to an actual Figma screen as well. So we have both versions. You will actually have a comparison with a design and you have a comparison with an actual implementation image from a previous commit. So you could choose which one you want. I hope that answered your question, Todd. If not, you can maybe elaborate a little more in the Q&A section, and our panel can help out over there as well. First, okay, I think I just we have a question about Figma as well from Joris over here. Uh, yes, I think I just answered this. It's also about Figma. Yes, we have this capability as well. Figma integration, in fact, went live like say 2 to 3 months ago, where you can compare Figma design with a particular actual implementation or test case. So that's possible as well. Yes, we do have that capability. I think I answered all the questions that were here. Okay, wait, there are a couple more flowing in. Variable explore browser test management tool. Okay, so I will talk about a couple of upcoming webinars as well. So I think there's a question about upcoming webinars. I do have a slide after this about upcoming webinars, so I can cover that over there. But also, you can take a look at our LinkedIn page. We continuously post updates about all upcoming webinars. I think we talk about them 3 weeks in advance. If there's not one lined up for test management, there will be one lined up very soon. But I think there might already be. If someone from the panel could take that answer possibly as well, if they've got a little bit more knowledge about when the actual webinar is going to be. Automation script, which provides a build shots to Percy. Uh, Okay, we've asked for, there's an example here, which is, there's a question here from Takahiro, which asks about a sample automation script or code which provides a build shot to Percy. Again, I don't have an exact example over there. Maybe someone from the chat, from the panel can share a documentation link, but I can try and answer that here. And Harit can correct me if I'm wrong. He's an expert on this, but it it's as simple as putting one command. There are multiple ways you can do it inside your test suite, but the simplest way you can do it is maybe put a command called percy.snapshot. That's it. It's just percy.snapshot. And that's with the BrowserStack SDK or the Percy SDK, whichever one you want to use. We offer multiple options, but it's just literally one command and one line. That's it. So Harit, maybe you can talk a little bit more about this as
Yeah, I
well from
think right.
experience.
BrowserStack has a good amount of documentation across different frameworks, right? Whichever suits you. There's an example as well. There might be a GitHub link as well where you can download that particular framework and start using it with your URLs that you want to try it out. But yeah, we do have good amount of documentation at BrowserStack, which I had used.
Got it as well. But just for the folks out there, to let you know, it's as simple as one line. It's not a ton. So it's very easy to get started with Percy. And going over there, right? I'm just to give you a quick hint of what's coming up with Percy. We are actually launching our next AI agent after Visual Review Agent. Visual Review Agent was the one I demoed earlier. We'll be launching a new AI agent called Setup Agent, which is coming up very soon. Say again in the next couple of weeks, very August end towards early September. That's going to make your job of integrating Percy much more simpler. So you can actually integrate, it will allow you to integrate Percy with an existing functional test suite in say, and this is across hundred test cases. I'm talking about in say 5 minutes. You can get it integrated without you yourself writing a single line of code in 5 minutes. That's how powerful it's going to be, and that's coming out very soon. And this again will be available for all plans, including our free plans. So yes, very exciting stuff coming in, and also something which we are leveraging AI on. But if you want to give it a spin before that, you don't have to wait. You can go ahead and you can look at our documentation, which our panelists will share. It's just one line of code. That's it. Or if you want to make it easier, you can even just give it a set of URLs, Percy a set of URLs, and we can click snapshots from that. That's one approach as well. Okay, let me just see if there's any more questions. I know we do have just 5 minutes left. We need a high frequency. Okay, Harit, maybe you can help me take this one. There's one question here over here that how can teams balance Percy's pre-planned which is
Mhm.
just 5,000 screenshots a month with a high frequency testing in agile environments. And when is upgrading to a paid plan necessary? So you can talk about maybe your journey from moving to a low plan or to a higher screenshot of what you feel that would look like.
Yeah, right. So the Percy setting itself is good enough for us to understand firstly how much our utilization is. Under Percy as well, we have different browsers. So each browser screenshot is considered as one screenshot. So for initial testing, we can limit to maybe Chrome, right? And then see how it looks. And if you're confident enough with one particular browser, and that's when you can take the decision if you want to move with higher plan for multiple browsers.
Yeah. Good. That's a great answer, Harit. So I think I would sum it up as it would depend on how extensive you want your visual testing coverage to be. So,
Yes.
for example, if you like you said, if it's just one browser that you care, or you just want to dip your toes into visual testing waters, and you want to look at just one or two browsers, then probably your screenshots and your testing may be just a couple of pages. Your screenshots would work. Maybe if you can test a couple of critical flows, the free plan would work, and across just two browsers, so it's like it's one screenshot per browser, assuming you don't care about more resolution. Then if you want to shift to like you want to cover more browsers like Edge and say Firefox, a little more niche browsers out there, that you can expand towards that. If you want, if mobile is important to you as well, I would recommend taking that into consideration, because on mobile you will want to test on mobile browsers. You would want to test on multiple resolutions, because mobile you can either have it in landscape mode, you can have it in portrait mode. There's So again, it just goes back to how much you want your own visual testing coverage to be. So the minute you feel that hey, I'm getting more users on mobile, my mobile users are more, maybe that's a sign that you have to expand towards mobile. I think a good way to do this would be to look at the analytics of your products and your site, looking at maybe where your footfall and your traffic is going to be, and expand towards that. Maybe you start with just a core flow where you know most of your audience is going to be, and then you expand towards more niche flows. Right? Okay, I'm just going to wrap this up